Hello sewing friends, if you would like a detailed chat about bias binding and also bias binding machines, then this is the episode for you. I go into everything from trying different fabrics to tips. Stick around if you want to see more. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for your feedback telling me that this is what you'd like an episode on. So I'm here based on request. So in one of my Sunday sews, I shared my new obsession, which is making my own bias binding. Let me show you. Yes, we are at box storage level already. Another one I finished. So I have an entire box now of bias binding that I've made. And so I shared that I'm pretty addicted to making it now, and what a great thing to be addicted to. And I have already used some of it. Someone asked me what am I planning to use it for, so I've already bound an entire quilted jacket with it and also bound pockets on something else I'm making. I'm also thinking of binding the inside of trousers, all sorts of things. So here I am to give you tips, ideas, try things out. So let's start with the fact that I do have the little kit where you can drag and pull it through the iron. Hang on. So I have one of these kits, which means you can drag it through. So I will put a video in below where you sort of pull this through and iron it as it comes out. People do talk about their concerns about burning their fingers with steam. If you'd like to know more about that, it does say, if not, yeah. Put end of strip to ironing board, pin end, ooh, useful. Pull tape maker and pressing folds, keep iron close to tape maker. So if you'd like to know more tips on that, then belong to the biscuit tin, which is coming soon, because we'll write about that in there. But I want to focus today on the Simplicity Bias Binding Maker. This is an older version. There is a newer version now, and there's two versions available. One has a piping setting as well, and one is just like this. It's just in a newer box. So let's start first of all with the fact that it is not a cheap purchase if you buy it new. Now, anybody watching who knows me knows I'm always out for a bargain. I went second hand. Second hand means you can get it for half or a third of the price. If you are thinking of buying it new, that's a decision to make. Hopefully my vlog will help you decide if that's something you want to do. But if you're not keen on that amount of spending, look out for a second hand one. They're always out there because people often will buy these things and then realise they don't use it. Editing Me says, breaking news, if you become a member of the Biscuit Tin, you can actually get a discount during the month of July to help you buy a brand new one. So see details below and head over to the podcast. So mine came second hand, so it is in the older box. Now, one of the first things to do is think about the tips. They don't say on the outside what tips they come with. And that's frustrating because when I've been looking at other second-hand ones for you, you can't see. It comes with instructions, but even in the instructions, which is in many languages, it doesn't say again what tips you get. Now, by tips, I mean these puppies. So I was really perplexed when I first got mine, remembering it was second hand, because there was quite a few tips in there. I'll show you the ones I had. So whoever had got it had either got these as part of it or bought them. So I had this one, which is a 1 1/8 quilt binding tip. This one, which was a 1-inch quilt binding tip. This little puppy here, which was a 1/8 single fold tip, and this 1 1/4, which was the same type. Now, I didn't know whether I needed single fold or quilt binding. I had no idea. It wasn't until I spoke to somebody who'd got one of the newer ones, and they told me that they had a 1-inch single fold, which looks like that, in theirs. So off I went, realising I didn't have that, and I had a try with this and was like, what's happening? This isn't what I want. So off I went, searched, ended up buying one from the US, but still cheaper to buy that and the second-hand thing than buy a new one. And got myself a 1-inch single fold tip. So single fold is what we think of as this traditional bias binding where you've got the 2 bits on the back. Later on in the episode I'll talk about this quilt fold here. So if you're going to buy one, new or second hand, definitely asking what bias tape machine tips come with it. Ask to see photos. If you want to do traditional binding, you want the photo that looks like this, not the one that looks like this. So can you see they clip at the bottom, and look at the way they behave differently. I have since bought second hand. Since got another one of these quilt ones. That wasn't. I got a 3/8 single fold, a 1/4 single fold, which is still much wider than that little pup there, and a 3/4 single fold, which I can't see, right there it is, and a 3/4 single fold. I bought that selection because I wanted the 3/4 one, but actually a 1/4 one could be quite nice if you want like that very fine binding for, or even this 3/8 one, if you want that fine binding that you go on trousers there. So again, I just kept searching eBay and things until I found them. And also it means I can show you. So once you have the tip that you want, to make sure you really check that out when if you're buying new or second hand. So then you get your set. I'm just going to bring it over, and you get a guy that looks like this. Okay, so now we have this box. It's a kettle cable plug-in, which is the same as my sewing machine. So if I can't find that, I've got spare. When you open it up, you'll have pieces in here. One's missing, it's here. And this bit here. So let's talk through. So first of all, this bit's the roller. Here it is in this bit. So this is designed perfectly so that this stands up in here. And this roller goes in here like this. So let's explain. So the roller, obviously you roll on the binding. These rubber things move around. So this moves so that you keep the fabric perfectly there. So you adjust that to the width once it's in. Tips on adding the fabric on the roller. You need to cut a point on the end that you put into the tip. And then the other end you feed into the slot, wrong side down, with the clip on the right, that clip there on the right hand side. So wrong side facing down, right side facing up. We feed that into the slot, and you slide the fabric underneath the clip. You then wind it all on, which I will show you when I make some later, but that's how that works. So think you want the clip on the side where this puppy is, so that they line up, so the fabric lines up over this side to go up and over there. You have to let the machine warm up, so you need to put it on, and you know when it's warm because this light goes green. Now there are different settings. I've tried them all and I'm mostly staying up at the high at the max. If unsure, go cooler for your first test. You'll know if it doesn't work properly because it doesn't crease it properly. Now this slides off. If you look here, these feet, there's a hole at the end, so you slide it that way and then it lifts off. So when you put it back in, you put the feet in, very hard upside down, and then slide it back across. Slide and off, in and across. Now be warned, once this reaches temperature and that light goes bright green, you will need to clip on the fabric into here. You slide this off and you have to get it all the way in. Now, I don't want to touch that because that's the hot bit, that's the hot plate there, and that gets hot too. You've got to get the fabric to this point because that's the roller that rolls around, and it sounds like this. No, it won't, hang on, won't work, it's not temperature. I'll show you that once I've got some fabric in it. But they're the basic things that you need. So before we make some, let's answer some questions. So somebody said, can you use viscose? Yes, you can. It was a slippery old beast to get in here and pulling through, but you can. So this is a full-on drapey viscose there, and it's worked. And I even used a selvage on the back. This was a type of viscose as well, and that's worked perfectly well. And then this was more of like a cottony viscose. It feels much more cottony, but very drapey. That worked beautifully as well. If we look in my box of delights, just grab a drink. I've used a wide range. So this is definitely more polycottony. This is like that sort of cheap gingham that feels quite polycottony. That worked well. I had to do this a second time, so I did it the first time on a cooler temperature, but it's worked perfectly, and that is super soft. Then I've done full-on quilting cotton thickness. That needs the full heat temperature, and it works perfectly well, but it did need the full heat temperature. So there we go. I did several of those. So your quilting cottons, they're a good one. Now some of those have stretch. We'll talk in a minute about that, but here we go. Now this one, what I did was actually attach together multiple quilting cottons that were in the same colour theme, and I think that works really well. It can be a challenge sometimes at the point where the join goes through. If, like me, you're a little bit slapdash sometimes, then you might get a bit of like a, that one's worked perfectly. Can you see that one there? It'll be fine, but it's struggled a little bit there. So if you're a little bit imprecise with your joins, it's fairly forgiving, but can you see here it's quite short on that edge there. Once you turn it over, you can't tell. And the good news is, once that's folded over and stitched down, no one will ever know. So sometimes it does slow down through the machine at that point. And sometimes I've just done it so poorly, I've had to just iron that bit. But when the majority of it's done, that's not too bad. I've done vintage bed sheets. Let's get those, like proper St Michael's vintage bed sheets, and these ones have terylene in them, so that's that no iron stuff. So you do need a good temperature on that. There is a setting for terylene, but I needed the hottest temperature for them to work properly. So I think that's answered the question of can you use a range of fabrics. Obviously I haven't done like a satin. Imagine cutting that out, how slippy that would be. I will do at some point, and obviously I haven't done jersey. Now you can buy jersey bias binding, so it's definitely something I will come back to and try, but right now that's a bit of a one, isn't it? So now we've tried out some different ones, shall we do some cutting and talk about the cutting tips and the joining tips, and then we can make some. So I've been and sorted through my scary scraps mountain, and I've chosen some fabrics to cut out. And what I like to do, as I showed you just now, is combine them together to make the most of it, because you get a longer piece. So I found this guy, fat quarter, and let's hold that up close so you can see that. And I found this one, and I think the teal in here brings the two out, so I think that would work together, and they're almost like bird feet, aren't they? So those two paired together means I'll get a longer piece. And then I found a whole selection of sort of greys, and I think these together would work well to give, because there's not enough of each one to make enough bias. So there are several ways to cut. I like to use shock horror, a ruler, I'm not a big fan, and a cutting board. Now you might be the kind of sewist that uses these things all the time. I don't cut on a cutting board because I cut on a bit of wood downstairs and I am a scissor girl, but I am trialing a rotary cutter for this. So rotary cutting, if you've got the right equipment and you're used to it, you can get these lines going quite well. I'm still finding it a bit tricky. So I will lay out my cutting mat, and then on a nice piece like this where you've got a good amount, you can do a different technique, which I'll show in a minute. But I know they say to cut at a 45 because what you're looking for is the stretch on the bias, but quite a few fat quarters, not this one so much. Oh yeah, look, have got stretch. So I don't cut them fully straight, but I do a slightly less than the diagonal, and it has not gone wrong so far. So you can rely on me to give you tips. So I will do that sort of angle. I'll get way more out of the fabric, and look, you can still see that's a good level of stretch. So I will cut my first cut and then I'll start cutting from there. Now you might think, how much do I need to cut? You cut double the width. So if you're doing a 1 inch one, you'll cut a 2 inch width. Doing 3/4, you'll cut a 1.5 inch width. I just draw on with a biro because you'll never see it because it's round the back. Wouldn't recommend a Sharpie because it goes all the way through, but biro, never be seen because all of that is hidden behind. So I will lay that out, I will draw on dots, and then I'll draw the lines, cut out the strips, and then I'll show you how I join them. So I'm just going to do a bit of cutting and then you can see the next bit. Okay, so hopefully that was really helpful. What I would say was, even though I cut the fabric very carefully to 3/8, so obviously double that, 6/8, it wasn't wide enough, and I could tell that as I was threading it in. So I then threaded it into a 1/4, which is obviously 2/8, and it has this interesting bit at the bottom. Quilting weight fabric was really hard to get through that. I really had to keep pushing, and it's got this little thing I had to use tweezers to pull it through. And even then, what you probably saw from the video was I was having to pull it through the machine. So it did work, but it was patches where it didn't, and I've ironed occasional patches on other bias binding, but this was like consistently didn't fully work. So 3/4 is 6/8, so 3/8, 6/8. It would be nice if I had one in between. I'll have to have a rummage, like 5/8 or something, 4/8. But this is the width I did this one here. And then of course all the ones I showed at the beginning were the 1 inch. So 3/4, I think, by the time you have folded that over onto your project, that's a nice size. Thinking about the fact that that folded over, what would you want to do with something like that thick? I mean, we're at relay loop level, aren't we? I will, for another time, try these ones and report back on this, but today I wanted to just show you the main things. I hope you found them useful and hope you found the tips useful. And if you want to know anything else, we're working on something special for podcast listeners. So if you are already or thinking about listening to the podcast that Jess and I do, it's called So What's New in the Biscuit Tin. It's always linked in the details below. If you become a Biscuit Tin member, so a biscuiteer, if you take up the level which includes things like a newsletter, there might be some extras in the newsletter connected to this as well. Well, I really hope you found that useful. Up here, I'm putting a vlog on an episode I made about how to make fabric pumpkins, because I know this may be coming out before Halloween, but it's always good to get ahead. I'm sure you could adapt them to make strawberries and things like that as well, or like a melon, or one of those oval courgettes, tomato, apple. So hope you've enjoyed this. I'll catch you again soon. Bye.